Just Energy with naturopath and medical intuitive Dr. Rita Louise. We have learned from Einstein's theories that matter and energy are one. Physicists believe that all systems in nature have their own particular way of vibrating. From the swing of a pendulum to the waves in the ocean to the light that brightens the sky each day, each of these oscillates at its own unique rate. In the same way, things such as rocks and minerals vibrate very slowly and at speeds that are imperceptible to us. Living things such as plants, animals, and man vibrate faster and appear to be alive. The same holds true for every thought, feeling, event, or word we speak. Each has its own frequency or rate of vibration. What many of us don't realize is if we take everything in our own universe down to its simplest form, it is all just energy. Join Dr. Rita as she explores questions such as, what are we made of? Why do we get sick? How can I live a more balanced and whole life? Call in and talk to her and her thought-provoking guest. Send us your questions and get the help you need to move beyond any obstacle or challenges that may be affecting your life, right from the source. So stay tuned and explore your possibilities.
Hello and happy Friday and welcome to Just Energy Radio. I'm Dr. Rita Louise and thank you all for tuning into the show today. So it ended up that we kind of have this whole theme thing going on today where we're going to be talking about ghosts and spirits in the first hour and we're going to be talking about ghosts and spirits in the second hour. How did that happen? In the first hour, we're going to be talking to Caron Goode about her new book, Kids Who See Ghosts and How to Guide Them Through Fear. And in the second hour, we're going to be talking to psychic medium John Holland about his book, Chronicles of a Medium. And so we're going to be just digging deep into the spirit world. One quick announcement before I get Caron on the air. Well, actually, two announcements. First, July 19th at 7 p.m., I will be doing a teleconference, a free teleconference on intuition. The title is Our Intuitive Selves, How to Tap Into Your Own Intuition. And that will be on July 19th. I don't have all the details yet, but as soon as I get them, I will post them on the website and announce them on air. But it's free, and we like free. Also, we'll be doing our mind yoga question later on in the show, and since this week we're talking about ghosts and spirits and all that goes bump in the night, I figured I would give away, for the lucky winner, a copy of my book, Dark Angels, An Insider's Guide to Ghosts, Spirits, and Attached Entities. It seemed like an appropriate choice to me. Anyway, got lots of questions, going to get lots of answers, so let's just get on to it. So let me tell you a little bit about Caron, and we're going to get her on the air. Dr. Caron Goode is gifted with compassion in assisting others to effect lasting transformation through spiritual coaching, books, classes, and seminars. Caron's continuous education, experience in psychology, and professional writing makes her a great source for parents wishing to create and maintain a nurturing relationship with their children. The most common thread of these disciplines is energy of the mind-body-spirit connection and how to access it, bringing it into focus and then putting it into successful action. So from kidswhoseeghosts.com, Caron Goode. Hey, Caron, how are you doing?
Hey, Dr. Rita, I'm doing great. Good to be here with you.
Well, it is so wonderful to have you back on the show. I mean, your last book, Raising Intuitive Children, I have to tell you, I have a number of clients that have very open children, and they're a little bit lost as to what to do. And I've recommended that book because I think it's just a wonderful guidebook to help parents that aren't, into the whole metaphysical thing like you and I, to give them some guidance as to how to support their children. And now you have this new book about ghosts, and I'm like, hey, we're kind of on the same vibe thing going on. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. And let me ask you, why write a book about ghosts? How did that whole thing come about?
That's a good question. I've asked myself that too. It was so it was so synchronous with Raising Intuitive Children. I started that blog in 2009 when the book came out. And after writing the book, to be honest with you, I couldn't sit down and write a 300-word blog. It was like, I can write you 300 pages, but 300 words? So my husband had the A&E channel show, Psychic Children Who See Ghosts, and that was what started my blog. So those terms, psychic children and ghost, must have had, like this viral marketing hit, because I suddenly had thousands of comments and questions. And Dr. Rita, all of my questions came from parents who were unclear as to what this ghost thing was about, or they were scared because their kids were scared, and they didn't know what to do. They didn't even know if they believed that what their children were experiencing was real or imaginary, and their kids, had been in their bed, and they wanted to get them to go back to their own room. So this just started flooding in, and the whole blog became answers to parents' questions. And, several people said to me, why don't you put that in a book? I mean, just save people going all the way through this blog, day after day. Put it in a book. And the publisher loved the idea. So, boom, this book was an outgrowth of, confusion and questions and things that needed to be clarified. So here we are.
And it seems like children these days are much, much more open to, all right, I'm going to reframe that. I think that there's a lot more acceptance of children who see ghost spirits, have psychic abilities than there was in the past, where parents would just go, it's your imagination, whatever. And wouldn't you agree with that, understanding?
Yeah, I think I think you and I might have the same prediction that this phenomena of children seeing ghosts is going to continue to grow, because I compare it to the 1980s when Whitley Strieber wrote that book, Communion. I don't know where you were at that time, but I was just fresh, out of psychology school, and people would come to me with their own scenario about having been visited by aliens. It was the decade when E.T. and other movies came out. It was the decade of Starman. And I think that what the media and the books did for mass consciousness was open it up to this whole idea of aliens. And even more, the UFO network and the cover-ups. There was that whole genre of writing and media. And now we have it for ghosts and children who see ghosts and mediums who assist ghosts. And I think that this whole decade is going to be dubbed the same thing. But what happens, as you well know, is once the mass consciousness has got a grip on it from television and being fed all of the fancy woo-woo stuff, it gets right down to 13-year-olds asking me on my blog, I'd like to see ghosts. I love the Ghost Whisperer. I would like to help ghosts the way she does. Can you help me? They haven't even seen one, but they love the idea of helping ghosts. Isn't that great?
That is great. And I think it's just wonderful that there is permission, and these children aren't looked at like they're crazy.
Well, I agree with you, and I think that things like the books like that you and I put out are fun to read, but they also give people permission to not believe if they don't want to. We want them to believe in their children. We want them to believe their partner, if their partner sees something. But you don't have to bash it. You don't have to make fun of it, and you don't have to say, well, I don't believe that. It's like, we don't care if you believe it. Just sit down and talk and work with the person that you live with and hear what they have to say.
They
That's kind of
believe
my
it.
stance.
Mhm. I just like that there's room for it, because I don't think that children seeing ghosts is a new phenomena, and
certainly not.
You know, as I sit here and think about it a minute, I don't necessarily think that more kids are seeing ghosts than saw them before necessarily, but it's okay for them to see it and say something about it and be validated in what they're seeing, as opposed to taken to the psychiatrist and, you know, here you need to go to the funny farm.
Exactly. And I would agree with you. More acceptance, more actually people also who see a loved one who has passed over. I noticed in my book, I was looking through some of those Harris polls, you know, where they just call up and have people call any 2,000 people in the general population and ask them, hey, you know, have you seen a loved one who died? And, you know, 65% say yes. So we're kind of over the halfway mark, you know. It's not paranormal anymore. But talking about it maybe will make it more normal in our mainstream mind.
I like to post kind of funny quotes on my Facebook page. Mm-hmm. And I saw one the other day, which wasn't a new one to me, but it was talking about how science changes, not because the scientists change their mind on their theories, but the people that had the theories that were older theories die off, and the newer ones are accepted as being truth. And I feel like...
I love that. So apt here.
But I think it's very much true, and so kids that are 13, 14, whatever, that are writing on your blog saying, I want to see ghosts. Can you imagine when they're 20, 25, 30? Just amazing.
They'll be very open-minded. You'll enjoy this story, too, Dr. Rita. I had a woman write me and said, I don't know what to do. My 18-year-old just told me that he's been talking to ghosts since he was 13. So this has been going on for 5 years. So I emailed her back, and I said, what upsets you about this? She wasn't upset that he was talking to ghosts at all. She was upset that she was finding out 5 years after the fact. So I think that's great. Mom wanted to know what was going on, too.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it was a private conversation.
Have you ever seen a ghost, Caron?
Yes, I have. When I was a child, I saw a lot of, growing up Irish Catholic, the ghosts that I saw were actually saints in the Catholic Church, St. Teresa to be specific. But there was also a story that opened my book, Dr. Rita, that was kind of astounding to me. There was a time in my childhood when I saw at the Catholic school, you know, you give 10% of your allowance, you put in a little envelope, and they mail it away to Catholic Charities. But I once had this man with a bald head who was in a friar's kind of robe, and I think my mind probably associated him with images or pictures of St. Francis. But when he came, he used to say thank you to me. Never knew what it was for, but he always felt very peaceful, and, you know, I could close my eyes and hang with him for a bit, probably before I went to sleep. So in my mind, you know, he was real. And it was only years later when I came home from college, my mother had one of her Catholic newspapers open on the kitchen cabinet, and I saw a headline that said, Padre Pio died. And I looked at his image, and lo and behold, it was the man that I saw when I was a child. And Whoa. It turns out that as a saint, he had documented, however the Catholic Church documents sainthood, he was able to bilocate. And there are stories of him appearing over battlefields in World War II, seen by a multitude of soldiers. So obviously he's now a saint of the Catholic Church, but I did see him. And I've had 3 episodes of seeing ghosts that actually 2 of them took place with my husband, and another one took place with a friend when I was in Peru. So I've had several experiences that I could only explain as the souls of people who had departed this plane. And, you know, mentally, telepathy, I could speak with them and interact with them. And in those 3 instances, there were witnesses. So I would say that they occurred at a time in my life when I was very psychically open, had no boundaries. It was very much a water element for me, if that makes sense. Right now in my life, I feel like a very sturdy tree with deep roots. If I tried to flow somewhere, I wouldn't go. But those experiences with ghosts were quite dramatic, and I'm happy to share them. I just didn't know how deeply you want me to go into that right now.
I have to tell you, when you were telling the story about Padre Pio, I got the little, like, hair on my end thing going on.
Yeah, that was never something that I told anyone, and it was something that I forgot, you know. But seeing his picture, and I actually found an article in a magazine that someone wrote about him, you know, just who he was and what he did, and I think it was dawnmagazine.com, DAWN. Someone had a write-up on his gifts, you know, as a paranormal person. So, interesting.
I think that as a person on this planet, he has just an amazing story, and without us, you know, spending a lot of time going into his story, I would definitely invite, you know, the listeners to go do a little research, because, you know, you're just touching one little aspect of his, I'll say, amazing career. I mean, the stories that you hear about him. I mean, I'm just going to share one little one that I had heard was about a girl who had been very ill, and her parents took her to Rome or something, and she got to hold his glove. He was already dead. She held his glove and had a miraculous healing.
Yes, I've heard those too. Not that one specifically, but you know, he still heals today through his energy, and whatever that lovely miracle takes place, I'm very pleased. I grew up Catholic, but I'm no longer Catholic in that I don't attend churches. I consider myself spiritual as opposed to religion. But the stories of the saints and their gifts have always fascinated me, and Padre Pio's ability to bilocate or actually be with a soldier on a field, or, you know, a sick child. I remember that there was a story about a sick child whose bedside he visited when he was asleep in his own, you know, cell in the monastery in Italy. So, wonderful stories.
Anyway, so I would, you know, if people are interested, there's just a ton of information, a ton of stories, but we need to keep moving on, because I could just talk about them. I was raised Catholic too, so, you know, it's we got that thing going on.
And we're both, you know, we're drawn to that, so there you are.
Actually, my favorite saint was Bernadette. Because she saw visions. She saw dead people.
We like her.
We like her. Let's go back to the book. When a child experiences a ghost or, you know, a visitation, are they often scary experiences, or does it really depend on the energy of the ghost that they encounter?
I believe that for older children, a lot of times it depends upon the way that they feel the energy of the ghost, and obviously sometimes what they see. Shadow figures frighten children, I have noticed, below 15 or 16. For some reason, they don't always feel scared enough to run away, but they don't feel comfortable approaching or communicating. The shadow-type figures seem to draw curiosity. But the younger the children, I have noticed that if the children is overly sensitive or have a high startle response, they tend to be frightened easily. And if it happens to be at night, of course, they kind of get a double whammy. But I agree with you, it's mostly about the energy of the ghost that they feel and the visual of the ghost that they see in terms of how they respond. To me, there's a group of children that are simply afraid, period. And that's their temperament. They're afraid of their environment, period. And if something unknown or new appears, that unsettles them more. And that's kind of the nature of their sensitivity. But in general, I think that children respond to what they see and feel. Has that been your experience?
I don't work with a lot of kids in my practice, but I would make the assumption, because we all feel energy, that would, be the case.
Yeah.
I'm a ghost chicken, and so when I was a kid, I did not like them coming around. Did not like them coming around at all.
It didn't feel good to me either as a child when I felt them in my bedroom. And even as an adult, it was 2000. I remember going to my mother's house. I was picking her up from the hospital and bringing her home from some cancer surgery. And wow, it was a couple of years after my mother's death, and I spent the night in her house prior to picking her up the next day. And I went to bed, and my whole gut was just shuddering. The house was so filled with fear, and so filled with something that I couldn't see, but the presence was ominous. So I went to bed, and in the middle of the night, something was sitting on my bed and crushing my toes. And I jumped out of bed, turned the light on, and the first thing I thought of was maybe my father was present in the house, but that wasn't it. And whatever it was, I did a clearing and went back to sleep. But all I could sense was, as my mother had cancer, as her energy got lower, her fears were just truly pulling in around her, very scary things. And so I had to do a clearing of the whole house before I could go back to bed.
Fun thing to do at 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm sure. When children are seeing ghosts, and I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this question that it'll make sense, are they typically seeing like family members that have passed? Are they experiencing miscellaneous entities that happen to come through? Is there any, standard or commonality of the kind of presences that these children are experiencing?
Yeah, that's a good question. I can tell you what I'm familiar with in terms of what I see and what I work with. The most common that I hear about and get stories on are a deceased relative. Sometimes the child knows who it is, and sometimes they don't. And so it might be that, going back through family pictures, or when somebody cleans out a closet and puts a box of pictures on the table, the child sees it. But family members definitely, and for teenagers, I have dealt with some teens who have actually seen a friend who might have died in a car crash. And that was a little scary for them, but once they understood the experience, they were okay with it. And the second common experience that I'm familiar with are more like Brad Steiger's stories when he grew up. In the book, he talks about growing up on the land, actually the exact spot where an old stagecoach stop was. And he lived out in the middle of the country, so when he and his sister went to bed at night, the ghosts came out, and they would hear horses, and they would see people dressed in the times of the 1800s, whenever that coach stop was there. So they lived in a house built over that area. And I get stories like that from children of seeing different periods, if they've moved to a new house, or they've moved to a new apartment, or they're living on a farm that was once, owned by a family for a period of long years, like 30, 40, 50 years. So they do see, I believe, whether they're ghost or imprint patterns of beings who've had some sort of experience there, they are seeing people of different periods, and often they are human or human-looking.
Yeah, we don't like the ones that don't look human-like. And
they're scary.
And it's interesting because I guess my first impression before I started reading the book was that really what we were going to be talking about were little children, like little children that have the monster in the closet. But really what we're talking about is this full range of, and I'll say 18 and under group of people.
Well, we are. We're covering the whole gamut because there's as many teens that I get emails from, as there are moms of preschoolers. But it's interesting, somebody asked me, why do I have so many psychics in the book, and then I have this chapter on the skeptic. The book was originally planned to have, so many therapists and so many parents of kids, and then people like John Holland and Sonia Choquette who were psychics and grew up, seeing ghosts as children. And so, what was it like to have this experience from the time you were a child now that you're an adult? And so, most of those kinds of stories are what the book has ended up being filled with, in that professionals dropped away or didn't want their name associated with it, so I chose not to use their material. But what you're going to find is that if there is a consistent seeing of ghosts, and it's not a one-time episode, and it stays with the child after age 4 or 5, they usually continue to see ghosts on into their adulthood. And they also end up working in the field in some way, helping people, either teaching intuition, like John being a medium, writing, sharing stories about it to make it more popular. And most of them feel that it was inherited. They didn't just pop out of the womb and suddenly have this gift. They feel there's some sort of genetic or temperament associated with passing it on, family member to family member.
I totally agree with the temperament part. The genetic part, not so much.
Yeah, many varied opinions. But that's why the book ends up being stories of the adults, too.
Mm-hmm. What about when a child is very young, they often, talk about invisible playmates. Are those ghosts, too?
In some cases, I feel they are ghosts. There was one experience where a mother out in the western shores of Maryland wanted to sell their log cabin. They were moving. And I went out with her, and she had seen a Native American ghost, if you will, or spirit walker, who seemed to be a protector of the land. So we came out, and with assistance, we cleared, the land. We were basically asking the spirit of the land through her. She communicated with him to release the land and bless it and let them move on, because they were very, very caring takers of the land. They honored the land. Anyway, at the moment that the ghost she's talking to says yes, her little 3-year-old comes running in and says, Mommy, my bunny said goodbye. He said we were going away. So the invisible friend, the bunny that the mom always thought was a figure of the imagination, turned out to be the same ghost Mom was talking to, but he didn't want to frighten the child. So he appeared to her as a bunny. Now, that's their story, but that invisible friend was kind of verified by both in that moment of synchronicity, and I witnessed the child coming just at that moment. So imaginary friends that help children deal with life seem to be ghosts with their own stories. Child Lucy, whose story is in the book, had a little girl ghost come to her, and they became friends. So her mother wanted to take her to a psychiatrist and, have her observed. And I basically suggested that we just watch Lucy. Lucy saw a ghost at her dad's house one night, and the ghost came to Mom's house. So you've got a ghost that now travels with Lucy. And Lucy talked to that ghost for about 1.5 years. So we find out the ghost story is that she lost her parents in a car accident, and they all died. And she's here to help Lucy, and Lucy thinks that she's helping the ghost. So this is how children in my world act it out. They play it out, they imagine it, and who's to say what's real for the child? But in a couple of cases of documented, journal notes by parents, they will say, this is what the ghost told my daughter, and, when my daughter was ready to say goodbye to the ghost, she did, and the ghost left. So maybe we create what we need as we need it.
It's possible. Caron, we need to go to a break right now, but when we come back, why don't we talk about why ghosts are here in the first place? And I'd like to get your opinion about what that whole phenomena is about.
Sound
good? Okay, the music should be here in a second. There it is. Okay. I'm Dr. Rita Louise. This is Just Energy Radio. We're here talking with Caron Goode about her book, Kids Who See Ghosts. Her website is kidswhoseeghosts.com, and we will be back after these words from our sponsors. Oh, and don't forget, we're going to announce the winner of the Mind Yoga question later.
Just Energy Radio with your host, Dr. Rita Louise, will return right after these messages.
Sensitive to energy? Want to explore the world beyond the five senses? Looking for a new career as an alternative healthcare practitioner? Then the Institute of Applied Energetics, Medical Intuition, and Energy Medicine training programs may be right for you. Our comprehensive curriculum provides students with a deep understanding of how to detect, evaluate, and transform the subtle body, as well as techniques for correcting energetic imbalances that may underscore a person's ability to experience radiant health. So if you are sensitive to energy, contact the Institute of Applied Energetics right away. Be a catalyst for changing the way healthcare is done around the world. Visit www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com and start your new career today. How would you like to live long and enjoy great health? How about creating solid bones and whiter teeth? Strengthen your heart and eyes and have radiant, youthful-looking skin. There is an ancient health and longevity secret that has been used for millennia in Egypt, India, and China that can help you achieve this. For the first time in the modern world, Pearlsium brings this ancient wellness secret to you. For more information about Pearlsium, visit www.productsforthesoul.com. Before we get back to the show, I would like to thank all of you for tuning into Just Energy Radio. Many of the people I've helped over the years were listeners just like you. If you're at a junction in your life, don't stand alone at this important time. Call me or send me an email. We can set up a private consultation so that you too can experience health, healing, and wholeness in your life. To find out more about the services I offer, visit www.soulhealer.com.
And now back to Just Energy Radio with Dr. Rita Louise.
Hello and welcome back to Just Energy Radio. I'm Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for staying tuned to the show. We just lost Caron, so I'm going to dial her up real fast and get her back on the line, hopefully. So just kind of bear with me here 1 second while I have to look down at this piece of paper with her phone number on it. Okay. Well, there she is. Hang on. There she is. Now I'm like doing retarded things. All right, stop that. Caron. All right, unmute. Shh. Caron? There you are.
Yes.
Are you there?
I am, thanks.
I thought I lost you, but you're here. Anyway, okay. You're a ghost of my computer. Let me I wanted to do my little announcement thing about the mind yoga question, but I thought I lost you, and I was kind of freaking out there a little bit. So let me do my question, then we'll get back to ghost, because this is actually kind of a ghosty question. So I will say that we did not have a winner last week, but this was kind of a hard question. So the question was, these evil spirits enter the body through all 5 orifices, going straight for the head to drive their victims mad. That was last week's question. And the answer to that was jinns, or genies, which are Arabian spirits. So, no winner this week, but stay tuned to the show, and we have a new mind yoga question that we're going to be asking in the second half of the show. Okay. Before the break, we were talking about why ghosts are here. So from your research, what have you come up with?
Well, I wish I could even define here. I'm not an expert on the nature of reality, but I do present in the book, Kids Who See Ghosts, the idea to parents for their understanding of the different aspects of the light spectrum. And within the light spectrum, our human viewpoint is so narrow that a rattlesnake sees more of the infrared than we do. So I think that's one level, that there are gradients in these spectrum frequencies, and we humans happen to live and see in this one. But, when boundaries are thin and children or adults' brainwaves relax, shift space, go from alpha to delta or something in between, then their reality and their perception of reality shifts. So what can they see and what do the other light spectrums hold? That at this point is what I'm explaining to parents in hopes that they understand that just because they can't see it and their child does, doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. So that's one level that I'm explaining. Different light frequencies, different vibrational dimensions or spectrums, whatever words you might choose.
Okay, fair enough. I always like to point out that we can't see TV signals and we can't see phone signals like for your cell phone, but we know that they're there because our stuff works.
Exactly, and we can see the stars at night, but when the sun's out, we wouldn't say they don't exist. We certainly see the stars. It's just a different ability at a different time.
Mm-hmm. If you have a child who says he or she sees a ghost, what should you do? What would be an appropriate response to that kind of commentary?
I think an appropriate response is actually not to want to talk about it. What most parents do is start asking questions. What do you see? What does it look like? Where is it? What can we do? Mostly every expert and every parent that I spoke with who's had something to do with ghosts and children say, listen, just to please, sit down and give them your full undivided attention and let them get all of the excitement and the fear and all the emotions out. Just listen. So once all of that has bubbled out, if a child is scared, the second step is to soothe them. Hug them, connect with them, put your hand on their heart, massage their hand, just something to help them calm down. If they were sleepy, you want them to be there with you and wake up and that sort of thing. So I think those are the first several steps. After that, it gets into really the parents' values and what they want to do. Some people really do want it to be okay that their kids talk to ghosts. So I really suggest that they just make it part of their natural day. You get up in the morning, you sit down, you might ask, if I ask my kid, because I was doing dream work at the time, what was your dream? Let's talk about your dreams. A parent might ask their child, let's talk about ghosts, what did your ghost say, or what's your ghost update? So you might just make it part of the everyday reality. Again, you don't have to believe in it, but neither do you want to indulge it, and you don't want to act like it's some big scary thing unless it is. If it's a big scary thing, then we calm them down and take care of it as soon as we can. One little boy called me once. Well, his mom called me, and by the third phone call from the mom, I was talking with the little boy. And whatever the ghost was in his room that frightened him in this new apartment, he couldn't deal with, and Mom didn't know how to deal with it, and her father didn't know how to deal with it. And we literally had to find them a psychic who would come over and take care of the situation. When I talked to the little boy, he said, "It's making me sick, my tummy hurts, and I need help." Bingo. Okay. So when it's that, when it's making a child sick because of their personal anxiety, we get help. But in the majority of situations, parents are pretty accepting, and then they'll play with them, a little play therapy, some colors, drawing, whatever the child needs that's inside that needs to get out, that's what we aim for. So that at least gives parents a target, talk to me about it, draw it, stand the way the ghost did, go to your room where you saw the ghost and explain it to me. And they do. They're very, very clear. And if they're scared, ways to empower kids to get through it is to make a game of it. One little 3-year-old girl, they built a little shoebox for the ghost to live in at night so it wouldn't hang around the girl's bed. That worked for that child. For another child, it happened to be Halloween, and the child was scared, and the ghost was in the bathroom, and they went and bought a pirate costume with the sword, and the little boy took care of it because he was scared, and he didn't feel right even in the bathroom, and it lingered for a long time. So the parents didn't know what to do. So to empower the child is to do something like that. Let him go in with his own sword and deal with it. If kids can deal with it in their way, Dr. Rita, we think that's great. If not, as you know, there are wonderful mediums available that can help parents understand what they're seeing, or if their house might be haunted, or if there's a clearing that needs to be done, or a conversation with a ghost that needs to take place.
Mm-hmm. When children, we're kind of talking about the scary part. Mm-hmm. Are there children that actually enjoy their visitors and the interaction they might have with dead people?
Most definitely. It is true. We focused in this book on mostly kids who had scary experiences, because I couldn't imagine kids going to bed at night not wanting, hiding under their covers like I used to. So there are lovely children and parents who talk with ghosts, who see angels, who keep track of a grandparent, for example. In Kids Who See Ghosts is a story of a Native American father who shared with me that his young son played with the grandmothers, that they were raising the little boy. And as the story went on, I found out that the grandmothers were deceased. So this was the boy's first 5 years of his life. He played with his deceased spirits. He called them spirit walkers. And that was a beautiful story. And when the child went to kindergarten, the father went right along and said, "This is our culture, this is what we believe, and this is how we live. So if my son brings it up, please be accepting. And if there's something you don't understand, call me. I will come to school." So that was the entire belief structure and environmental acceptance that child had lovingly with his grandmothers. It was beautiful.
That's wonderful. And I would think that kind of interaction, you know that I do the ghost hunting stuff, and when I have been in homes that have had small children in particular, it was so common to see Grandma or Grandpa or Aunt Sally in the bedroom. So common.
That's very true. And my co-author of Raising Intuitive Children, Tara Patterson, we actually got together because her second son saw his grandfather right after his death, and the grandfather stayed with him. In fact, when Grandfather went away once and came back, he cried. It's like, where did he go? I didn't see him. And then he came back about a couple days later, and he was there again. So it is common, and I think it's a beautiful thing.
You hear stories, especially about really small children having gifts, seeing, recognizing their past lives, seeing ghosts. What shuts them down? What makes it that as they get older, they don't have that ability anymore? I mean, is it a natural process, or is it something that's happening with society?
That's a great question, and I think there's two factors, Dr. Rita. One of them is that children's brains before age 5 really are 135% larger than the human brain. And around age 6 to 7, the brain starts to prune itself. So if the child never saw a ghost or didn't develop those skills, or the second factor would be the parent or somebody in the household shutting the child down. So if the child had that experience but didn't get any reinforcement that was positive or helpful or responsive in the life, then they would shut that door, shut the gift down, and the brain would prune itself around that age, and that ability might be lost. On the other hand, I've seen really psychic intuitive children that shut it down willingly, knowing that it's not acceptable to talk about it in school, but as soon as they're teenagers or they're adults and it opens back up again, they're okay with it because they remembered that they had it as a child. So I think the old theory that it shuts down, I'm not sure that's so true. I think it might be culture that helps the child change, or the child kind of making an internal decision to go do something else right now. Used to have a child in Boulder, Colorado that used to see a ghost in his 8, 9, 10-year-old years, but he also had a phenomenal IQ for science and an aptitude for science, and he turned that whole intuitive aspect into, he went to a magnet school and became, very well known for his science and achievements. And if you ask him about the ghost, he would say, yeah, that was a good time in my life, but that didn't interest me. And he would go on. So I've seen a couple things, but if you ask me for one major factor, Dr. Rita, I've got to say environment. I think the theories that the brain shuts it off are not really true anymore. I think we're going to find that it's going to change.
And I think that there's a big part where we just don't pay attention to it, that it's there, but we don't look at it, we don't acknowledge it, and it's just there.
We forget about it, right? And go
on. We have someone that's calling in interested in taking a call.
Sure.
Okay, so we have a caller from the 702 area code. Do you have a question for Caron?
Yes, I do. Hello. Thank you for taking my call.
Hi, who's this? What's your name?
Hi, my name is Shamina.
Hi. What's your question?
And my question is regarding relationships and love. I recently started speaking to someone. I met someone not too long ago, about 5 weeks ago. And
okay, we're talking about ghosts, correct?
Huh?
This show is about ghosts.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. All right. Bye.
All right, thanks. Bye. Okay, that was interesting.
I couldn't hear her, so I didn't know what she is.
Okay. Don't cry. Okay. It's like, she was having a relationship problem.
Got it.
And it was like, okay, but, the show's about ghosts. Not about readings and your relationship issues. Okay. So let's see. We have about 10 minutes left, and there was some information about your book that we wanted to talk about. So let me ask one more question, one more topic that I'd like to get into. And this is about dealing with a ghostly presence, and it's kind of a two-part question, but I think you'll get where I'm going. If there's a ghostly presence in the home and it's determined that it's negative, is there stuff that you can do to get rid of it or to protect your home or your child from that presence?
What I have done is create a doorway of light. And I actually ask someone from the other side, an angel, relative, friend, to meet the soul, the spirit walker, the ghost at the door of light and bring them through. So I haven't been like the ghost whisperer, for example, who might, force an entity through a light door or something like that. In my own experience, I have not found trying to protect a child from a ghost or an entity to be successful. And I feel boundaries are thin. So what I try and do is empower children to set their own boundaries. I recently spoke with a 12-year-old from Colorado, and she can see ghosts and has seen them for many years. They don't scare her, but they hang in the bathroom or the bedroom, mostly where her presence is. So she's taken to painting rainbows with an imaginary paintbrush until she sees a mass of color. And in her world, that's her boundary. So boundaries work sometimes, but to be honest, if it's determined to make its presence known and it hurts and it's harmful, I get help and ask someone who has experience to do the clearing and move the house, move out of the house, whatever needs to be moved.
And I think that's important for people to know that something can be done, whether it's by you as the parent or homeowner or whatever, or by somebody else, like me, because that's one of the things I do.
Exactly, because, the whole point is, I think, as a child, I felt space invaded, It doesn't feel safe inside and it doesn't feel safe outside, and if you're not safe in your own home, then what's a child going to do? What's the person living with the ghost going to do? Sometimes I've seen scared children, but the parents, knew the house was haunted because they bought it and it was way up in some Canadian land. And they just got the kids used to the situation. They lived with these ghosts, but the kids weren't happy about it. So it's kind of odd to do some family counseling around getting your kids used to ghosts, but I'm with you. If they're scared, if it doesn't work, it's your space, it's your home. Deal with it and get help. Get you.
Well, and especially if the ghost is just nasty. I mean, there are nice ghosts, Aunt Sally and whatever, and then there are not so nice ghosts that come around, and I don't know that I would want to have to endure being in the presence of a ghost who just had really negative, nasty energy, especially being that sensitive.
Oh, I so totally agree with you. And what's even funnier to me, funny in the sense of odd, that some people feel that they don't have any choice. The idea of a ghost is so, far out that they wouldn't even know to ask for help. They think that they need to accept it. There's one story in the book about a woman named Andy who went to live sometimes in her grandmother's apartment during summer months to visit when she wasn't in school. And there was a resident ghost in that apartment that the grandmother was happy with and lived with. But the problem was he banged pots and pans at night. Now, if you were a 10-year-old, that would drive me nuts at 50, 60, 40, or 10. But the grandmother, was probably hard of hearing. It didn't bother her in the least, and they named him Harold, and Harold hung out with him. But she was just laughing. She says, why would she have put up with all of her pots and pans being taken out of the cabinets and out of the cupboards and she'd have to put them all away and being banged around, and that's what that ghost did at night, and it went on all the time. So something like that, I would definitely have the place be haunted, if that's the term. Is that the right term?
Cleared, yeah.
Cleared, thank you.
Cleared. Yeah.
To me, he was haunting them.
Yeah, no doubt. Although I have heard stories of ghosts that do stuff like that, and it turns out to be Uncle Frank, and he thinks he's being funny, and he's not getting the attention that he wants, and so he's just kind of raising the ruckus to get attention.
Well, it certainly begs the question, doesn't it? Night after night? I mean, come on.
Anyway. So before the show started, we had a little conversation, and one of the things that I learned was that your book is like new, like just got released from the publisher, and you're doing a book launch next week. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I'd love to. If a listener were to go to kidswhoseeghosts.com, they're going to see a big blue cloud that says book launch. And what we do is on one day, Tuesday, June 8th, we ask everyone to please buy the book, because if they buy it on the same day, it will become a bestseller. And that's the way to get the word out about this kind of phenomena. And it's the way to get the word out to parents who don't know how to deal with the situation of their kids being scared of ghosts. So on June 8th, we ask that you buy the book, and Amazon will send you an email confirmation. You take your little confirmation number and go to Kids Who See Ghosts and enter that 10-digit number to go to a room of people who have offered phenomenal bonus gifts. Shirley MacLaine and Dr. Meg Blackburn-Losey and Jonathan Goldman and other people who have been in this field a long time and support the spiritual, normal development of kids and parents and all of us. So that happens on Tuesday, June 8th, which is next Tuesday. And that's when we're asking everyone to buy a copy of Kids Who See Ghosts and go and receive several $1,000s worth of bonus gifts, which are other books, email downloads, podcasts on intuition. And as I said, I heartily invite you to join this launch. It's going to be very big.
It's going to be big. And, okay, I'm just going to give myself a little plug. In the front of the book where they have like, hey, this book was really great, so-and-so, I'm even in it.
Your name is there, right up front.
I'm in the book, and on the webpage and everything. I showed it to my husband. He was like, whoa. He was impressed.
Yeah, we appreciate your endorsement.
It's a good book. I mean, there's, the whole field of ghosts and ghost hunting is just really coming so much to the forefront. And I think this is really the first book I've ever seen that really is addressing how children deal with, interact with ghosts, and giving them some help, insights, anything.
There are a lot of great books for kids about ghosts, but there isn't. You're right. This is a one-of-a-kind book, and that's why we want to bring attention to the fact that there's help for parents of kids who are scared, and for parents whose kids aren't scared. It's a way to say, look, this is a normal phenomena for some children, and let's talk about it. That's the main thing. I want people to talk about this topic. It's so hush-hush in our society, particularly our Western society. It's just a hush-hush topic, and it's like somebody's got to start it, so I'm starting the conversation.
Woohoo. Caron, there's the music, which means we need to go, but thank you so much for coming on, and I'll have you back.
Thank you, Dr.
Okay?
Rita.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
That was Caron Goode, author of Kids Who See Ghosts. Definitely buy the book on Tuesday at kidswhoseeghosts.com. And we'll be back with John Holland after these words from our sponsors.
Just Energy Radio with your host, Dr. Rita Louise, will return right after these messages.